So poor Sardis and Laodicea don't get that. They don't get the positive. So you can check that out and see what he liked that some of them are doing and what he doesn't like that some of them are doing.
Susie, speaking of not liking things in technology, we're being recorded.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, now I just have, there's one question that I had that to start us off. In your opinion, what do the scriptures have to offer us through the fantastical visions of Revelation? What is Revelation? I mean, you've all heard, you've read some of it, you've talked about it, we've covered Revelation a couple times here since I've been teaching. So what, in your opinion, do the scriptures have to offer us through these? They're a little bizarre. Some of the stuff is it's hard to understand. It's hard to imagine. What does it offer us?
Well, to me, it reveals that Jesus is the Lamb that came to save us
Okay.
from sin. So a lot of the visions and images in Revelation, Jesus is the Lamb.
Okay, yes. Yeah, very true. Anything else that you've heard or that you've maybe felt as you read Revelation?
Well, isn't this where the Antichrist and the beast and all that stuff come from?
Yeah, I think, yeah, some of it. Yeah. With it.
Doom and hope.
Doom
And
hope. Yes, doom and hope. Yes, okay. Yeah.
Maybe the ultimate, that happy ending at the end, God's still in charge and, keep focused.
Yeah, keep focused. Right. Yeah, there's a lot to kind of distract your focus in Revelation. But I don't think what we're talking about today is going to be too difficult, because if you remember, the title of the course is Partners in a New Creation. So that new creation is part of the happy ending of the book and what Chris mentioned, and the new creation. Okay. So it reveals God's promises to his people. It discusses those, and it's important to focus on that, because you really can get kind of, I mean, I've read Revelation a couple times, and I've heard a lot of different viewpoints on it. Has anybody ever read the Left Behind series?
Yeah.
I had started out. I never got through the whole thing.
No, right. You didn't. You got some of it. Yeah. Okay. So some people, kind of take what they see in Revelation and mold it into this, talk about this fantastical view of what they think Revelation is saying. So I don't think we're going to go there. We're not going to go there. That's not exactly where we're going to go. So it talks about good and evil. There's some discussion about it. It looks like the war between good and evil, and it certainly is part of it. Speaking of good and evil, who or what were John's readers experiencing that might be evil? Well, at the time John released his letters to the different churches, what was going on that they might find evil? We'll start with the.
Well, were they having problems with Rome?
They were still having problems with Rome. Yes, there were still issues. Because as I said, remember we talked last week about it. This was written about the same time as the Gospel of John. So, and they were both under Roman rule.
This was kind of the time where Nero thought that Christians made very good torches and lion food and things like that. So torture was commonplace and acceptable as public entertainment.
Right. Yeah.
So it was that gross.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with football.
How do you feel about American football?
No, I'll admit, that's not a direction I thought we might go.
That's for next week.
Okay, so the Roman Empire, I remember in history, in school, the Roman Empire. I mean, truly, I didn't remember how awful they were to the rest of the world. I remember, the great things in architecture and philosophy and literature,
Government.
art, government, all kinds of amazing things. While they did some pretty awful things too, the very awful things.
So I appreciated, Wendy, that you said that the Christians were having trouble with the Romans, but the Romans would probably say that they were having trouble with the Christians' fault. That's how you spin that.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the spin.
Yeah, and your point of view. Yeah. Okay. So when we're reading it, when you read Revelation and you hear the evil of Babylon, it's referring to what was going on with Rome. The substitution was made. And I will admit that there was a time we had a class where the author suggested that a lot of Revelation was written sort of in code that the readers would understand, but the Romans, it would kind of go over their heads.
That's why they're talking about Babylon.
Right.
Babylon is Rome.
Right.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind also. But I just thought today we're not really talking about the political directions that Revelation might take us. We're talking more about the creation, the new creation. All right. Okay. Yeah, it's amazing how I write these things, and I think to myself, "Oh, I know what and then I can't tell you what I wrote." So it can't be that important. Okay, so it does go on and talk about what in the world did I put there? I can't imagine what that is. Oh, dueling reigns. I have here dueling reigns. Okay, and then it's talking about maybe again the battle between good and evil. So the dueling reigns, and the Roman Empire it being the one, and the New Jerusalem. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The New Jerusalem. Okay, so it's meant to be read aloud. You can imagine because it's a letter to all these different churches. It's not quite like here where nowadays we can send out an email and reach everybody at the same time. So it had to go to 7 different churches, and how many people within the church, and so it was read aloud to the groups. All right, and he's working to persuade Christians to be faithful to God and reject the evils of Rome. All right, so now we'll go through section by section. The first section on page 70 is verses 1 through 4. Okay, and listen carefully, and then tell me if there's anything surprising or not exactly as you might have imagined it in these verses. So then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away." Personally, my first thoughts immediately were of Darlene, because we hear that script, parts of that scripture so much during a funeral, and so about how he will wipe every tear from their eyes and death will be no more. So I think that this is a familiar part. But what in there, is there anything that strikes you in there that, might not be typical of the way you saw things?
That the home of God is among mortals.
Okay, yeah.
That's so countercultural.
That's very
in so
true.
many ways.
Yeah. And where?
Here,
Here. Yeah. I mean, when we talk about where God lives, we usually look up, right?
the old man sitting on the throne, ready to zap people.
I'm not here, but
Here.
up there somewhere.
There somewhere.
Up there somewhere. Of course, the astronauts haven't found it yet. None of the
The telescopes keep going further and further, and
you
Still can't
don't
find
see
them.
it.
Well, they
Can't
must be
find
they must be going out instead of up. Maybe they need to
the
keep going
universe
up.
is still expanding.
Yeah. So, but I think that is, and then the fact that, I've read this so often, and different authors have different references, and I felt like this is worth thinking about, that this is not talking about us joining God up there somewhere. It talks about God coming to us, being here. Like the second time he's come to us, he came to us as Christ, but here he is coming and taking care of us here, right here on earth.
The term is the same. He comes to dwell among us. The word tabernacling or tenting.
Yes,
So
tabernacle.
that ties in with all the rest.
Exactly, yes, and we talked about that last week. We used that term last week. And tabernacling, where he comes and actually resides among us. You remember that from last week.
What I like is he pitches a tent. And so God is as movable and transient as God's people are.
Yes, yeah. Think about that. We can't get away. He'll be there.
I'm thinking like the nomads.
Yes, that's right.
Traveling with.
Yeah, which is why that culture developed that, the tabernacle, because they weren't sedentary, they moved all over. Now, those of you who read the Left Behind series, how does that start? I read it, by the way.
Everybody, well, it starts with people everywhere, and all of a sudden somebody disappears, and people are disappearing all over the place.
Right.
And then
And where they call it, it's
they call it the rapture.
The
And
rapture.
I forget, it's taken out of context is where the rapture comes from. And I forget where it is. Do you know what verses people use? Because I know people who all of their lives, they believe that they're just going to be raptured out of here. Mm-hmm. So they don't need to worry about doing anything, getting ready, or whatever, because God's just going to come along, or Jesus is coming back and he's just taking them all with him. But that's not how it works. It's the opposite. And I always look to the Jesus's parable of the wheat and the tares, because the wheat remains, the tares get burned up or blown, or so. What is it? The evil is going to be leaving the earth. Mm-hmm. The good, that's what the new earth is. The good will remain on the earth. The evil is removed. So I always equate, I always say, the wheat and the tares is like a reverse rapture. People believe that there's a rapture, but that's not true. It's actually, it's more like the wheat and the tares.
Yeah, and it's not, the author tells us. I'll be honest with you, I did not sit and read all of Revelation preparing for the lesson, but the author tells us there's nothing mentioning a rapture in Revelation. So wherever Revelation, that idea must be in some other.
Yeah, and I can't remember where. I know I've come across it, but I want to say Thessalonians. That's what I was thinking, but that's the book I was thinking of, but I don't know where.
That was part of our lesson too, is that folks were so expecting that there's going to be a judgment right away, that that's why they stopped working. They're being idle.
Oh yeah, because Jesus is coming back. Yeah, you don't have to
Right.
You don't have to worry about it.
Yep, we're about to be toast.
Yeah. So we've been idle for like 2,000 some years.
Yeah,
Basically.
Yeah, there's that.
just waiting. It's coming.
The book series too, he was very selective
Oh yeah.
about who went, and people who thought they would go didn't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So-
First Thessalonians 4:15.
What does it say?
Those who are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air.
Yeah. So that started an entire an entire theology or doctrine or whatever that people have bought into their entire lives. And I have some relatives that think that way.
I think I just heard not too long ago how about picking out individual parts and not looking.
Right, it's cherry picked. Yeah, everybody does it. I mean, that's why we have 30-some thousand different denominations of Christianity, because everybody cherry picks. And it's like you said today, Pastor. It's easy. It's easy to take things out of context when we're only given little snippets at a time.
Right. Yeah.
So not the word, but the concept is certainly in Revelation, talking about the names that are written in the book, right, and the judgment that happens. So the concept is there, but the word isn't. And I think St. Paul picks up on that too, that there's a lot of that conversation. And I appreciated you talking about Left Behind has been read both ways. That you can read that the people that are zapped up are the ones that are saved, but you can also read that those that are zapped up are the ones that are not saved.
Yeah.
Which really messes with people who.
Yeah. I read the book, the books.
I read a couple.
I don't know if
I read them and it's sort of good. Yeah.
I think I did too.
I didn't read them all.
I don't think I read all of them, but I do recall the airplane.
Yeah. Well, they made a movie out of the first one.
Yes.
Because I vividly remember the airplane. Yeah.
The airplane was.
But there is a gathering, and that's part of that new creation.
Yes.
Yes. And we have that after where we are in chapter 22.
Yes.
Where you have the wash with the robe. And so there's some sort of selecting that is done, and that's difficult because most of us would want to be the ones selected by God. Certainly. But we do read all sorts of things in that.
Yeah. So that when I'm in a situation I don't want to be in, I never pray, God, get rid of all these people. I'm like, get me out of here.
Oh.
You never, I maybe.
I pray, get me out of here. I don't pray like, make these people go.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Zap everybody else, please. I don't think Jesus teaches that version. Or, forgive others as we have been forgiven. Easier to say, don't forgive anybody else, just me.
Forgive or not, just get me out of here.
Well, now I want to make a point because I thought this was kind of interesting. The author put something in a way that I thought was really interesting. It's as if God was raptured down.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of an interesting concept.
That's an interesting twist. Yeah.
Yeah, God was raptured down. So keep that in mind. And a heavenly Jerusalem was, it was accepted at that time. I mean, not just now. It was accepted that God is up there looking down, and so it was a unique idea for them too to think about that God would be coming down to them. That heaven would be heaven on earth.
And it's worth saying Jerusalem is the city of peace.
Okay.
Well, that's what
Not so peaceful right now.
the Advent sermon that I'm doing. That's the Old Testament readings from Isaiah, the second chapter 1 to 5, where it talks about Jerusalem being the holy place, and all peoples will go to Jerusalem.
It's going to be a crowded place.
Yeah, exactly. That's what. Yeah. How's it? Yeah. How's that going to happen?
We tried to make it happen politically,
Right.
in the 40s and again in the 60s.
Once again, it's
Peace has not been part of that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because man tried to force it.
Right. That's right.
Man tried to force it. Wasn't God's timing.
Okay.
Why no sea?
What was that?
Why is there no sea?
Oh, no sea. Why? Why wouldn't there? I like that too. where the author says, it's not as if John was anti-sea. Why was there no sea?
Where are we?
It's in
It's
the,
verse one.
yeah, it's first verse. And the sea was no more.
Huh?
Because the sea is chaos. That's where creation started. There was that chaos. Everything was undivided, and the first thing was separating the sea from the dry land.
Yeah, that's why the people were so. The people were anti-sea.
And you don't have the waters from above and the waters from below. The universe was seen as a watery thing. So you needed some sort of delineation or differentiation between the chaos of the universe above and the waters that were below.
So if the sea is no more, where do we get our water from?
Well, and Beth is not gonna like this.
You-
That's
But you still have a spring that is the water of life. So you
right.
still have spring. You have
We
the
didn't get
river.
there yet.
You have the river
Oh,
that
okay,
runs
okay.
through the New Jerusalem. through the-
And that's a very interesting question. You really got us started because there'll be more talking about water and that sort of thing in a little bit. But one other thing that the author points out is how important was the sea to the Roman Empire?
Well, they built all the viaducts.
Oh, they did. And how did they, trudging across all that land, but they didn't. They took a lot of their activity was on the Mediterranean Sea, that they would transport their people, they would transport their munitions, they would transport their goods. The sea was very important. And so, whoever controlled the sea, you could see would have a controlling, would also be controlling the people that they conquered. And so
That continues throughout history.
yes, exactly. It does. I mean, because when you think about it, at least at a certain time, and it's not so, it's still very important, but big cities always grew up next to a water source. It was because water is so critical, of course, not just for our health and our well-being, but for that kind of transportation and moving things around. That's sort of.
And livelihoods.
Yes,
So,
yes, very
fishing,
much so. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let me see here. The Greek word for city, anybody gonna think of? Is polis. It's polis.
Metropolitan.
Metropolitan or political.
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, yeah. So it's polis. And as Kathy, of course, would be able to instruct us in other languages, oftentimes the words have a feminine or a masculine version, and polis is a feminine version. Okay, so to them, not that they thought cities were like women or anything like that. They just, they had words and they had to give them a feminine or a negative.
Freudian slip.
Very strange. A feminine or masculine version. And so we don't do that. But we do have, like Uncle Sam, right? We talk about Uncle Sam. We think of although we do also have sort of a female connotation when we think of our country also, like Lady Liberty and so we sort of have a mix, but and there aren't a whole lot of words that maybe you can give us some in English that that have a feminine or a masculine, certainly man and woman, but
What's the masculine form for polis?
I don't know.
I don't know. There's because like you think, so I'm thinking German, and it's die Stadt. There is no
There was no
yeah
form.
that for it.
Just one or the other.
Oh, okay. That word is just
Yeah.
the word itself is either just masculine or feminine.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
No, we do have we change endings like actor and actress, or although that if you read that doesn't happen so much anymore.
And it's
They're all
a profession. It has definitely it was definitely gender related.
Yes. Yes. Right.
In Greek, generally, if it's ending with an A, as with so many other languages, that would be feminine. If it's ending with an O, it's masculine, but IS, like this in Latin, is gender neutral.
And Spanish does the same thing.
Yeah.
With,
But it's odd, sometimes something that you would assume would have a more masculine connotation has a feminine, or it has in Spanish, sometimes every once in a while you find I'm too far from my grammar, but the is what, an article. It has a feminine article and a masculine noun.
la or L.
Right,
Yeah.
and sometimes it doesn't, but at any rate, okay, but at any rate, Paulus, so it was, women had it had a feminine context in that regard. So you can kind of understand why the city is referred to as God's bride. You can see that, that would follow fairly comfortably, God and the bride.
What about
bride
church? Is church feminine in Greek? No,
church is feminine. Okay, so that again would sort of infer that marriage relationship.
it usually referred to Jesus because God was not always seen
Right.
as a male gender.
That's yes.
And so especially the spirit was often a non-gendered
Mhm.
or a
Mhm.
female.
Yeah. And forgive me
Sophia.
when I fall into God, it's like
Easy
a
to
change
do. A lot of us are raised up that way, and a lot of writing is still.
is still that way. Yes, yeah. And God the Father is
That really bugs me because I'll go to worship, and some churches use more masculine language than others.
okay.
And if I'm sitting in a congregational setting and there's a lot of male dominance for everything, not only with God but with God's people,
Oh, okay.
I sometimes sit there and I get distracted. Right, I'm saying, we got a whole bunch of books.
Okay, so this marriage and what does so God has taken a bride, and what does that infer? What does it infer to the people when it talks about God and the bride?
A lifelong commitment.
Commitment, absolutely.
The covenant.
Commitment and faithfulness and those so it shows. I mean, we've talked till now about covenant, but as a bride, it's maybe even more of a commitment on both parts than what we've seen earlier. And then all right, goes back. And here I have about the tabernacle, and yes, we talked about that briefly. And here God takes up residence with us, right? He's not drawing us there; He's coming to us. Okay. And there's also something here. The no mores. There's let me see in verse 1 is the sea was no more, and then in verse 4 there are there's another expression. Oh, there are two expressions of no more. Death will be no more, and mourning and crying and pain will be no more. And so they have had nothing but crying and mourning and pain as subjects of Babylon, of the Roman Empire, and that will be no more. So then we move on to verse 5 through 7. And the one who was seated on the throne said, "See, I am making all things new." Also he said, "Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true." Then he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty," okay, here's the water. "To the thirsty, I will give water as a gift from the spring of the water of life. Those who conquer will inherit these things, and I will be their God, and they will be my children."
So he's kind of like reestablishing the covenant, because And I don't remember where it is, but God got so fed up with the Israelites that he broke the covenant. He divorced them.
Wouldn't go that far. That he used language of adultery,
Yeah.
that the people divorced God, but not really.
I thought God was the one. I thought God was the one that broke it because he got so fed up with them.
He punished them.
Yeah, God often tells them that they broke the covenant, but I'm not aware of God saying of breaking the covenant. God does reaffirm the covenant over and over after it's been broken, but
Four covenants, or were there?
that's how you count. I mean, it depends how you count, because as Wendy's pointing out, here's yet another iteration of the covenant. Jesus is an iteration of the covenant all through. Just the other week we were talking about that and worship too, because you have a covenant with Noah, and a covenant with Abraham, and a covenant with Isaac, a covenant with Jacob, who becomes Israel. Okay. Covenant's written on their hearts, and so all the people.
Right.
And I don't think they ever made it. I don't think Jeremiah's come true yet.
No, it hasn't, and I think that's the gift, is that the covenant in many ways is one-sided. Like God talks about it as if it's two-sided, and we're, as people of God, to grow into that. Supposed to be living it, but but God's side never stops.
Okay, so here, according to the author, which I, not since the very early part of Revelation has God spoken directly to the people. He has spoken through an intermediary, like an angel or whatever. So this is the first where God is actually speaking. Behold, I make all things new. He's making all things new. There's a new heaven and a new earth, this new creation. And the author points out that it's not, and this is a little tricky maybe, but it's not brand new. Okay, it's not like getting a brand new, sparkling new. It's like a renewal of the situation, and that it's not like everything, and there wasn't cosmic annihilation. Is not what they're talking about here. They're talking about it's a renewal of what had been.
They're cleaning up the planet.
Yeah, that'd be good. So earth and all things are renewed, just as our bodies will be resurrected and renewed. Okay, God gives us the water of life as a gift to all who follow the Lamb of God. And it's important to notice that it's an inheritance. It's a free gift.
You point out as we're having wars over water.
Yes, yeah. Well, that we're going to have more of that too. There's more discussion about that that the author led us. Okay, so in Revelation 21 verses 8 and 9 says, but as far as for the cowardly, the faithless, the polluted, the murderers, the fornicators, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars, their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls full of the seven last plagues came and said to me, come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. Okay, so
Can we go back to verse 7, please?
sure.
Those who
I'd like to erase that first.
Those who conquer will inherit these. Does the author conquer what?
The author did, and
Conquer. Because if I want to inherit those things, I want to know who I have to conquer.
let me see here. What I'm going to read it to you when I find it, because
The participant book doesn't really.
no, it doesn't. It's in the leader guide. Okay. The twice repeated promise of the water of life given for free, or Dorian without price, underscores the economic contrast between the political economy of the Roman Empire and that of God's city. The flip side of the unjust commerce of Babylon/Rome is God's New Jerusalem, where life and its essentials are given as a free gift without money, even to those who cannot pay for it. All the promises to the overcomer, the conqueror, detailed in the 7 letters of Revelation 2 and 3, come to fulfillment in the New Jerusalem. We, God's children, are named as conquerors, as overcomers, and we are given an inheritance. So the conquerors, the author talks about the conquerors being those of us who follow Christ.
Must be like the martyrs.
The martyrs,
Even when life is difficult, stick with the witness.
the saints.
Yeah, although as
Martyrs
you
were-
point out, well, so much the saints, it's the work of God that makes people saints, right? He washes everyone in the blood of the Lamb. So
Right. But the martyrs. I don't know. See, I
really,
didn't find that was helpful to me, so I. Thanks,
Well,
Chris.
I think it just means those who stick with God get the inheritance.
Right.
Those who stray and
Defy God.
and like that goes on in verse 8, cowardly, faithless, polluted, murderers, fornicators, sorcerers, idolaters, liars. They're not the ones that are sticking with God. So they're the ones that are going to go into the lake of fire. Everybody else that sticks with God gets to inherit the north.
okay. The trouble is there's nobody left.
Right.
I mean, by the time you get through that list, I can say, well, I never killed anybody directly or fornicator or sorcerer. But, I've told lies. And so I think the challenge is that everybody ultimately gets judged. Like first you're like, oh, I'm pointing my finger over there. I'm good. I'm safe. I'm home free. Whoop-de-doo. But ultimately, like you tell little kids, when one finger's pointing at someone else, you have all the rest pointing back at you, right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard. That's why I appreciate Susie for lifting up that Revelation is a word of hope and encouragement, because so often it's used with that one finger of judgment, and all those people are going to burn with fire, and kind of ignores the other 3 fingers that are pointing back and showing where we're not.
Well, so what does that mean? Everybody's going into the lake of fire?
Wow. The author has a thought about that. So let's see if I can get it, if I can relate it in a way that you can understand and is accurate with what the author wants to say. So let's see. First of all, the question is, and the author brings this up, are these threats of what will come? Are they predictions?
Depends how you read the text.
Okay.
You could take it literally, and then it is. Right?
You can take it literally, yeah.
Or is there a deeper meaning?
Right. Okay.
To remember, this is apocalyptic literature, so it's written to be a vision. It's written to grab your attention.
Yes. And that's what the author is saying. It's written to get your attention.
Judging by the number of books and movies that really have.
Yeah. So you think of it instead as a wake-up call, is what the author suggests. Think of it as a wake-up call. Also, the author mentions, and I read it a couple times, but this list of bad people, take their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur. And of course, that immediately brings visions of hell to my mind. I assume everybody felt the same. And the authors go and say that there's not actually any, how can I put it? I don't think I wrote that down.
Not a geographical location.
No, not actually a
Physical place.
physical, well, yeah, and the authors don't physically put the people in hell. They don't physically visualize them in the lake. It says their places in the lake, but there's no description of that. No, I don't know.
So they should go. They have deserved to go there.
Okay, I think that,
No, but
I'll put it that
they're
way,
not
but
cast there.
yeah,
They're not immersed in that judgment.
yes, yeah. So you can, I would say that's to me, that was a bit of a tough interpretation there. But yes, I do, that is it.
So you're saying they deserve to go there, but they're not.
It doesn't, I wouldn't say go that far. It's
No.
just that it's not a done deal, sort of. And I like to know the authors did compare this section to the Christmas Carol.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
And the ghost,
Right.
the final ghost of what may happen. And again, as you said, that's what they deserve. This is what Scrooge deserves. He deserves to have that tombstone out in the middle of nowhere that nobody ever, all overgrown, nobody ever goes to see it. That's what he deserves. So, as you said, that's where their place is. It should be. It doesn't say that is absolutely where they end up. Just as, Scrooge had an epiphany and he changed his mind and he held Christmas in his heart forever and it turned around.
But does it say anything later about that they have another chance, or does it go into any?
I don't know. Yes.
I think you'd see that in verse 12 of chapter 22. I'm coming soon. My reward is with me to repay according to everyone's work. So there's still a future coming. That second coming has not yet happened. So
they have a chance to clean up their act.
yeah, this is the wake up call. I completely resonate with that. And we've been hearing that in the scriptures the last couple of weeks too.
Right.
Starting with Lazarus, he died. He didn't figure it out. But as Paul says, don't be disorderly. Stick with it.
Right.
Get focused. And
Right,
you have some of those
focused.
readings Monday, and we'll be studying. We'll hear it next week with Christ the King Sunday.
And you know what? Again, it's interesting that we are out of sync within the book, but yet
It's
in a way it's at a good time because this is horrible. This is awful. But I mean, we even have the reality of Christ's birth in a couple months, and we have the steps of Advent and that sort of thing, and so it just is so it kind of blows my mind. Although you said about relevant, and I think so you find that every time you read the Bible. If you just open it, you can usually find something that applies to your life right then. So it's not that surprising, but it is. It's interesting that we can relate from August 7th. Here we are, November 13th, and it kind of dovetails. It falls together. Okay, so again, shocking people into changing their lives, as would have been true in the Christmas Carol. And just a second, there's something I want to read from the leader guide for you. Okay, it says, threats and warnings throughout John's writing function like that, to shock people into changing their lives. There is definitely judgment in Revelation, but judgment is meted out most of all to the Babylon system and to all evil systems and structures. So in my mind, it doesn't excuse evil individuals, people who are not focusing on where things ought to be going, but it also doesn't excuse systems and structures. So it's a book of hope. It truly is. And if you
God wins.
yeah.
Unless you're one of these people that lives.
Yeah.
Well, if you are, the whole
It's
point
not
is,
over yet.
yeah,
You will be in.
Get a chance.
yeah, you have.
Get
you
a
know,
chance to repent from your evil ways.
Absolutely, right. Okay, so hope that the, and they're also hoping that the unjust empires will come to an end, and all people will come into New Jerusalem and live with God and the Lamb. So it's twofold. It's get rid of the bad institutions, and that we can also focus on joining and living with God and the Lamb.
Like I said, how are we gonna all sit there?
Yeah.
God's pretty creative.
Yeah. For destroy.
There's no sea, Mediterranean here. There's no sea.
It's gonna be cozy.
Yeah.
As we get used to seeing the lamb and we have that on our pyramids too,
Mhm.
that's a big deal. Because
Yeah,
the lamb is the one that takes our sins. Right? The lamb is the one that's slaughtered for the sake of everyone else. The lamb is the guilt offering, the sin offering. And so I think that's not to be underestimated. For me, it's so familiar, I forget.
right. Yeah.
But the fact that the lamb is right there at the center is the reason that you wonder if there's enough space for everybody.
Yeah. And that's about Revelation. The Lamb is the center. And it all focuses on the Lamb. So, yeah.
Why all this work?
Yeah, right. Okay, so the author in the leader guide returns to the theme of God's water of life for everyone, even those who have no money. And so we're going to get back to this water thing. It gives us hope at the time of economic and ecological crises. And, we are we are very fortunate. I don't have a lot of trouble with water. How blessed am I? I remember a summer years ago where when I'd take a shower, I'd have buckets in the shower that I could take that water and use it to save my trees. My trees were dying. This was probably almost 20 years ago now. And so we have moments, but there are people that are really struggling. And it's so one of the places that the authors mention is the Economical Water Network. No, ecumenical, water network. Are you familiar, Pastor, with the World Council of Churches?
I think is that the group that we've been doing the walk for water and the replacement of wells?
I'm not sure.
So I know the
Yes.
ELCA has been working hard with that
Okay.
for at least 20, if not 30 years.
Because it's tragic to think that water is used as a weapon. And I don't mean like streams of water to knock you down. I mean with holding of water, so people can't live. They can't live because
Polluting of water.
the polluting of water, yes, again, also, and even in our own country out west, it's a real problem. Because Colorado, imagine the Colorado River is drying up. Can you imagine such a thing? And because people upstream, not only because of people upstream, granted, there's ecological reasons to make it even worse. But what continues to happen is that people upstream are using water to irrigate. I can't say I blame them. They want to be.
Well, they upstream, they get it first.
That's right. But then it doesn't come to the people downstream who also have a critical need for it. And it's just really very disturbing. But I just want to then tell you about the Ecumenical Water Network. It's based in Geneva, and it's an initiative of the World Council of Churches. It is comprised of churches and church-related organizations that promote the preservation, responsible management, and equitable distribution of water for all, based on the understanding that water is a gift from God, a common good, and a fundamental human right. And so those are, this you can draw from also from this lesson today, because God is giving the water, the water of life, not just the physical water that we drink, but also the water of life to all and to everybody, regardless of their ability to pay. They don't have to pay. It's all just a gift. It is a gift. And I think you know, I think sometimes we forget that it's a gift, and we have to accept the gift and be responsible with the gift.
If you have any neighbors who go to Reformation Lutheran Church in Hafften, about 20 years ago, they were doing a push where they raised money for wells in our sibling synod in Tanzania, and they went and installed the wells, and then they were invited back to worship when the wells were blessed. And there was quite a bit of going back and forth. Pastor Mary Wolf was able to go. I presume Pastor Mike Benetham was the pastor there at the time, so I think we went as well also. But Pastor Mary, they'll come out to congregations, Bible studies, and talk about that experience, because that is a continued relationship. And the youth gathering, for those that have ever done a youth gathering with the LCA each year, that's part of the education for the youth. They do an exercise. They did that with the kids down in New Orleans, but we've also done it locally, both raising money, but raising awareness, as you said so beautifully, to share what we have, because our agricultural needs are a huge part of our water issue, because we like beef so much, and beef are raised on corn so much. We really are irrigating.
Well, and that's what the problem is, because corn is not a natural diet for cattle. It's actually a harmful diet for cattle. So to solve the problem, let them eat their grass. And that solves all of that problem.
They don't fatten up on grass.
And then what does that get into? That's all the money then, because the fatter you make them. Right. But grass-fed beef is the natural form of beef, and they don't have to be fat.
Right. So it's healthier if they're
They
not.
don't have to be factory farmed either. I mean, that's where, once again, that's where all this pollution and all this other stuff and all this environmental issues are coming from. We've destroyed our food every which way possible. Every which way possible.
So that puts us in the naughty list.
Yeah. Polluters.
Well, and we are, and it takes sacrifice to undo some of the things that we've done. And we're not always willing to make that sacrifice. I'm not a vegetarian yet. I'm toying with it, and my stomach loves meat, and it overcomes my heart and my head more often than not.
Meat is good.
I tell myself that, but it's also the meats that I choose. I try and do white meat and things that are gentler, a lot of chicken, gentler to the environment.
I was talked in several years ago to go vegan, because my body wasn't breaking down the animal proteins or so properly, or so I was told. So instead of solving that problem as to why my body wasn't breaking them down properly, I'm told to stop eating, which is the dumbest thing I ever did. Because I harmed my body even more from not eating the animal products. Because like Jan and I were talking before we came in, there's certain nutrients that you can only get from animals. And it's just, I don't know.
But then again, there are some religious traditions. You think Jews have kosher meals, people that are Muslim, we're just totally escaping.
Halal.
Thank you. Halal. Thank you. And Seventh-day Adventists are almost all vegan. There are whole religious traditions that say that part of our sustainability and responsibility and stewardship is to be mindful of what we eat and what we don't eat, and how we live.
But it's also, one time I read a story about someone who was vegan, and then I had all kinds of problems. So she was told she had to start eating animal protein again. And she had a farm, and she did her own, raised everything herself. And she said when she killed that chicken and plucked it herself, she had, I forget the exact wording, but it was more like a reverence for what she was eating. I mean, you just go to the store, buy your chicken nuggets and all that kind of stuff. You have no respect when the Native Americans took down an animal in a hunt, they always said a blessing over the animal. I kind of do that sometimes. I mean, if I'm making hamburgers, I don't, because it's kind of hard. But if I you know, whatever. But if I actually do this if I have a whole chicken, because I make a lot of whole chicken. If I have a whole chicken, before I put it in the crock pot, I'll just, thank you for giving your life to provide my body with the nourishment and sustenance that it needs. That's something that we don't do. We don't respect the animals that we are eating. God allows us to eat animals, but we've lost our respect for it.
And maybe it's the wording, because we do pray before meals, and I think that's part of where that prayers come from. And hearing Henry sing was pretty cool, because then Eve was like, I didn't say that one too. And how cool if we can then teach beyond that, like the reverence of what, not only are we giving thanks in meaningful ways as young ones to their level of understanding and ability, but also as we grow to deepen that reverence and our view.
Because nobody lives on farms anymore. When you live on a farm and grow up on a farm, you have more connection to what's going on. These kids have no clue where their food's coming from.
Come visit Susie.
Whatsoever. But they also only eat fake food. I mean, so many of these kids, when I was little, we ate what was served at the table. Now, when I go to a family function, all the younger generation, well, we're eating turkey for Thanksgiving. I've got little cousins that are eating frozen fish sticks and French fries or chicken nuggets and whatever. They won't eat the real food. Now, whose fault is that? I don't want to go there.
And I think it's a broad brush, because my last congregation was St. Daniel's, and there were quite a few people that were still living on the farm and doing not only subsistence farming, but that much is a way of life. So there are folks in this area that do get it, but you're right.
We're lucky in this area. We do have more than many other.
And it's cheaper. It's cheaper to do fake food.
Well, and that's
So
that part. But it's not more nutritious.
Oh.
Not more nutritious. So these people, the people that are doing it aren't healthy.
Yeah, but if it's filling and if you only have so much money,
It's cheap.
Oh, I know for sure. Oh, absolutely.
I kind of disagree with that. But if you're buying it, you're filling yourself up on soda and potato chips and all that other kind of stuff. You're actually spending more money because your body's starving for nutrients, but you're not getting. That's why obesity is a disease of malnutrition, because these people are starving for nutrients. But when you have to keep eating and eating and eating to try to fill your body, you're going to be spending a lot more money on all this processed junk. I mean, if you just would buy fruits, vegetables, meat and good milk and good butter, you're going to be spending a lot less than buying all the processed junk.
But do a study, like see if you can find it, because I spent a lot of time on this. And when I serve communities that are food deserts that don't have grocery stores, they don't have a lot of fresh meats and veggies. The bodegas sometimes do and sometimes don't. The SNAP benefits now do have provision for healthy food, but for a long time did not. And what you get from a food bank or a food pantry is a lot of processed food. What you're getting in school now for school.
Oh, it's total crap. Yeah, it's absolute junk. And this is why the kids are the way they are. These kids can't focus and concentrate because they're eating pure sugar. That's all they're getting. I've seen what goes out, and now our illustrious government is offering everybody free breakfast. Well, what are they getting? Sugar on top of sugar on top of sugar, which is what they were getting when they were paying for it. I say, feed these kids bacon and eggs for 2 months straight and watch their behavior change. Feed them bacon and eggs for 2 months straight. Watch their behavior.
Okay, you'll have it in Newark.
There you go. There you go.
Taste will not like it.
Well, okay, feed them turkey bacon.
Okay, we're gonna skip the word today, I think.
Well, I think we got a lot of it, because that was talking about, I was reading ahead and that was like, oh, the Radford stuff.
So maybe you want to read the word today, because Ronnie has mentioned that. So you may want to look at that
We
then.
still haven't read that series. We've talked about it with the book group. We've talked about watching one of the movies as a movie night. We really think it's worthwhile.
Like, we do the whole series.
Well, we had talked about just reading one book, but yeah, the
Well, I
whole
thought you
series would
did.
be awesome.
Yeah.
Didn't you do it for the, did you do it for the?
I think we did the
Oh, you're
first
right.
one. I think so. The Lion, the Witch, and the
Yes.
Wardrobe.
Okay. So we've run a little bit over. Thank you everybody for having me. It was great discussion. I really appreciate it. And Pastor, I love, new heaven and new earth and the hope. Always think when you read or hear Revelation, think hope. And I think that's, that'll steer you right. Okay, so we're going to read, do the memorization on page 78 as a closing and then the closing Revelation. See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them, and they will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. I'm sorry, page 76. And then the closing prayer. Let us pray. God of compassion and peace, we look for your coming. You come with beauty and mystery, with healing and love. You love us in your whole creation, and we are thankful. Give us confidence in your hands, Lord, and feed us and trust you always. Amen. In the Lord, while she Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. You, Pastor, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Your airport.
She said, I have a question for you, and Kathy said, turkey or pork? There is no.
Not next week. It's the week.
Right, I mean,
I had to, I'll follow the process.
Well, I didn't know. I'm not.
You know what?
His birthday. Tomorrow.
But you know what? I got sick.
yeah,
I ate a lot of meat digits that morning. And that's why I say I'm not sure that it was entirely. Sickness. Because my body's like,
just not.
I remember the last time it tasted so good. I visited somebody and it's like so good. And I ate too much filling. I got sick. So it's just,
It's like, I'm just gonna be, I can't do it.
I hate when I don't eat four leg nuggets.
Right.
Turkey.
The what?
I really wanted to be vegetarian, and we do eat a lot, but we eat very little.
That's exactly in school. Like in school, I have, I have all my lunch.
For a wedding, to be vegetarian. No, when the kids were around, I said I would not, because I didn't feel like that.
And then, no.
Give them, acid balance that they have. I'm just gonna so started writing nice, so that's what I'm going before I lay it out or if I had to. I have to figure out what I have to do.
Well, I don't want to give everything away. Put my water back over here.
Well, maybe I'll.
Well, we don't
See, last week I didn't have my water and I coughed and coughed and coughed. So that I was, what's gonna have that happen this time?
What?
No, I didn't mean
I
it.
didn't.
What do I need to know what Saturdays? Do I just read what's on, I'm trying to pay attention. I'm trying to pay attention to what you're actually.
Of course, you never did it before. You see, you've been led
You just sit there and it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to do this. Okay, what do I have to do? It's like,
So what happens on Saturday, Greg will be here. And so Greg will run all the time. I'll have to do anything on that. What I do on a Saturday is I cut out.
Oh, I've been hearing about a lot of egg
The
boxes.
Saturday group is usually not.
Oh, no.
So Saturday.
I guess we're still being recorded.
Well, it's not.
Oh,
okay,
Every Saturday I'm changing
right. Yeah,
People said,
Are you gonna read?
I saw something out in
the community.
the North, yeah.
Stuff that we don't need. All right. So he moves on the slide. I don't have to touch him. I just have to look at it.
He puts everything out. He and Susie come early. No one else really has been coming early.
We're still recording, by the way. I don't know.
Nuts.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Thanks. No apologies for good. Thank you. Just have to remember to cut that part out.